The Robinhood Capitalist. I'm your host, DJ Flores. With me, as always, my trusted coach and advisor, Coach Stacey. He might be kind of muted or very subtle to talking. He's having some trouble wherever he's on remote detail today, and I'm sure he'll give us that background. Coach, where are you at now? Obviously, you're having some connection difficulties.
Yeah, so it's another volunteer week here. So I got back from California really early, like Saturday morning. Spent some time on the weekend, but we had an issue. My church youth group had a camp planned, and the pastor is our normal bus driver. He had an emergency come up. They needed a fill-in, so I brought a bunch of teenagers. So we're at camp here. It's at the southeasternmost tip of North Carolina at Camp Caswell, Fort Caswell. 600 plus teenagers here this week at camp. We brought about a dozen with us, and so it's a lot of fun, but maybe not the best internet connection I've ever
had. Well, actually, you're coming through great. So I think are you having delays on my end? Is that where you're having the issue?
No, it was, normally I can see everything, both of our videos going very smoothly, and mine was just kind of stopping and starting, but now it looks good. So I think I found the sweet spot. I moved over just a little bit.
There it was. Just don't move. Just don't shift it at all. But anyways, can't wait to bring the guests. So how was your weekend before we get started?
It was good. So, it was anniversary weekend. My daughter and her husband were in for a visit. We all spent one day together at the beach, and then we did a recap about the mission trip. So we gave our report at the church on Sunday and let everybody know how it went. And then Monday, bright and early, made the 6-hour drive to get here. So it's been a busy month or so.
Yeah, you don't stop, and you got a lot of things going on with the cycle / you're growing as we speak, right?
Yeah, the fitness centers. We've picked up another handful. I'm not sure what I can say or not say yet, but the meetings in California went well, so I'll leave it at that.
Yes. Well, meetings going well are always what we're looking for, and that's what we're trying to help you with when you guys are out here. Thank you love that, you guys. I love this. So this might be the logistics monk, not sure, but Facebook user, love that you guys are church people. Always found God-focused people are successful. Yeah, well, you got to have somebody to follow and somebody to look up to.
We are spiritual beings gifted with an intelligence living on a physical plane, but we are spiritual beings. You got to feed that. That's the good wolf you got to feed.
That's the good wolf we talk about all the time, Coach. Well, let's bring David out. I can't wait to bring him out. I've talked about him quite a bit since doing podcasts. He's been one of the people I've mentioned along my journey of networking, meeting people, sharing their story of being in the corporate world, saying, "Man, why was I doing that? I didn't even like what I was doing. This is what I was meant to do." I think he found his calling. From meeting him, it seemed like it was the right fit for him. He has a passion to it. He has a story behind it. I think everybody with the great purpose, I can't talk, with a great purpose and mission is going to find that it connects some way on a deeper level, like this does for our next guest, David Koch. He is with a company called Assisted Living Locators. Let me pop this up so we can highlight that. So this is who you're looking for. This is a franchise. So again, like we talk about here on our podcast, is other franchise opportunities. This was a franchise opportunity that he had. So again, we'll have and we'll bring him out to share a little bit more on what was the deciding factor between maybe he was looking at other franchises beside this, and what really guided him to this journey or purpose. But again, I can't wait to bring him out. Coach, any last thoughts before we get in?
No, this is exciting. You've got me pumped up too for our guest, so I can't wait to spend a little time here together.
Well, I think you're gonna love him. And again, it was all about timing. I think there's some interconnected things that we'll find, but let's bring him out. You get one heartbeat song. Take it seriously. This is your masterpiece. Don't forget to David, what's up, my man? So,
DJ, what an introduction! Thank you. That's quite a build-up.
oh, come on. Well, listen, when we met, it was kind of it was like I was sharing before we went live. But
Yeah,
so for everybody who doesn't know, the way we met was BNI. I talk about it a lot on here. It was
yeah.
right. It was the right timing for me. I needed like-minded people talking about business, goals, journeys, new visions, those exciting things that drive me. And so BNI was my source. And so going and kind of just visiting other groups, which you're allowed to do. I actually went and visited a group that David was at, and we connected right away, like most similar-minded people do. And it was just he invited me to a one-to-one, which for BNI talk, for anybody who knows, is really what you should do with everybody who's a member to get to know them a little bit deeper. And that's where we really got to talk. And I heard his kind of journey and what drove him to with assisted living locators. And so, yeah, share where it all started. What, I guess, where was your background with IT? Again, give that and give that where you shared me. You had that sit down with your kids, your wife, and
Yeah.
said, hey.
Well, no, it kind of came about hitting a milestone. You know, I'd been in corporate IT for 30 years, and I had a great career. I enjoyed so much of what I got to do. It didn't stagnate. I was constantly doing new things. But, you know, you hit a milestone like 30 years, and you think, this has been great, but is this all I'm going to do in my career? You know, I've always liked to try new things and learn something new. And I'm not saying I was, you know, sleepwalking through the work at the end, but, you know, there was a little bit of that been there, done that going on. So I thought, all right, let's shake this up a bit. Now, what was crazy is I did not know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something different. And I knew that wouldn't happen if I kept doing the day-to-day, because then just inertia would take over and another year would go by and I'd be there again going, what do I want to do? So it was actually Christmas morning. And I said to my sister, she was actually visiting us that morning, I said, I'm going to quit my job. And she said, oh, really? What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. But just as I said, I have to force my hand. And so, you know, I'd been talking with the kids about it, getting their opinion. As you pointed out, I was an empty nester that year. So I thought, you know, this is kind of like the planets lining up. Everything's kind of coming together. We're starting a new year. Before I get into the new projects and budget and all of the things that happen in that Q1, I thought, let's just step away and find whatever that next thing is. So I left on very good terms. I naively thought at the beginning I may take like a 9-month hiatus and go back to the workforce when the kids went back to college in the fall. I couldn't sit still for 2 weeks. I had to get a resume together and put it online because I like to do things. You know, I can't sit still. So I took interviews and I talked to headhunters and I, you know, investigated some options, but really they were very similar to what I had been doing. And I didn't make that drastic move just to go do a variation on it at a different company. I wanted to really do something different. And again, I just didn't know what that was. I was approached by a franchise broker and I had never considered a franchise. He was a great guy. We had a lot of wonderful conversations. And along the way, he presented me with 3 franchise options to consider. And I really did consider all 3 because he had done a nice job picking options that played on some of my strengths. And so, you know, I molded over and I debated. And after a few weeks, I couldn't get away from the fact that assisting living locators really touched on many of my strengths. There was the connection that my father had vascular dementia 10 years ago. And my sisters and I didn't know that there were companies that would help families get through this easier. If we had known that, we would have used them. But hindsight, you know, 2020. So that was, you know, a personal connection to it. But then there was just the thought that if I could spend my days helping families go through a very personal transition, I'd like to do that, you know. And even though I was in corporate IT, DJ, I was always more the front end, the face of IT. Okay. I was very customer focusing, working with the end users. So I had no problem being in front of a group of people or listening to their needs and then synthesizing it down to a solution. Again, so many things about this assisted living locators franchise made sense. And so a year ago in June, I bought it. In July, I got trained. And then in August of 2022, I went live. So yeah, we're coming right up on a year. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. It just seems to have been a very good fit for my strengths. I mean, there's all kinds of things I can't do, and I'm very open about that. But somehow this franchise seems to click on many of the things I do well.
Coach, thoughts? I know you got some thoughts.
So we've got so many people right now from the tech side of things that are getting laid off or looking for new things to do.
Yeah.
When had you looked at or thought about becoming a business owner before you met the franchise broker, or did that happen kind of by chance?
No, it's funny you asked that. Yes, I had. And in fact, I worked with some really spectacular guys. They were part of my team in the last couple of years. And we had talked about maybe running a business of our own, but we could never figure out what that business was. And then unfortunately, before we were able to figure it out, the team kind of dispersed and everybody went their separate ways. I had been thinking about it for quite a while. This wasn't a snap decision that Christmas morning. I had thought for a long time that I really would enjoy running my own business. Again, didn't know what that would be, but I wanted a chance to do it. And again, this is where when the franchise option came along, it just made sense. It was a great way to do that without starting from scratch, right? You were kind of, I don't want to take anything away from franchises, but you were kind of buying a prefab company, just inflate instant company. So I like the idea.
And when you were going through the process, you said you looked at 3. What made this one really stand out? Because a lot of folks have a difficult time figuring out what are my strengths and where is my place. How did you make that determination?
Yeah, one of the things I liked about this one a lot is it was very personal. That you didn't need to immediately start off hiring a team, renting a storefront, buying machinery. So it was an easy one to get into because it could, and it still is, just a one-man show. I mean, many of my colleagues do have teams, and I think I'm getting to that point where I'm going to have to start bringing people on, but the low overhead was very attractive. The other 2 franchise options were interesting, and they had their moments. I mean, I really did consider them, but neither of the other 2 hit on all the things that assisted living locators hit on. I really had a hard time finding a downside. Yeah, I even still have a hard time finding a downside with selecting this one. Good. So when you've got one that just makes so much sense, the other 2, good as they were, just paled by comparison.
It sounds like a familiar story, DJ. Yeah. I think I've told a bit of that story from my own journey.
Exactly. That's what I'm telling you. It's the ties and coincidences of how that work. And that's what I seen. When I met you, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's doing exactly what he should be doing. This is, it was, it was evident from the way you talked about it, the way it was even in the beginning. And again, there's certain aspects to doing a new business is exciting, and I think people sometimes get lost in that. But you had that deeper purpose, that reason, and I think that's why. I'm sure throughout this year, there's probably been certain times that you were like, did I really want to take all this on? And then, but then again, because of your passion for it and that deeper purpose, that's where I think your broker, you brought up using a broker, and we just talked about this last week. Stacey said he believes highly in working with brokers because the right brokers should do exactly what they did with you, and that's pairing you with the right franchise that in the end is when those hard times do come, you're like, but I love this. Like it's not like work. Would you say that in the end, that was the where it really sealed the deal for you?
Yeah, I mean, he did a very nice job of spending a lot of time with me up front, not even really talking franchises, just getting to know me and what my strengths are, what my interests are. And yeah, there have been times, of course, during the year that this has been almost overwhelming, but I've never shied away from a challenge. And in fact, I find if things are too easy, then you didn't really work for it, So, and you don't feel that sense of success when it's done because you didn't feel like you really had to work for it. It was more like a gimme. So I like a challenge. I like overcoming something. And yeah, sometimes I used to do this back in IT as well. You would fight it and get mad at it. And then you'd have that eureka moment and suddenly everything would work. It's the same thing here. You know, there are times when it's just not happening and you can't seem to, and then suddenly it clicks. And that's rewarding.
Coach, you got anything? I do have some questions. So, like I mentioned, previous, the coach, if you have anything, shoot some questions. I did shoot these discussion questions. Again, cast magic, everybody. This thing is amazing. Did you get that, Coach? I shared it with you.
Yeah, yep. I've actually got it pulled up over here too. So I've got the same questions you're looking at. But I thought of one before that. In a couple of different books, Greg Nathan talks about what it's like to be a franchisee, and he says there's 6 stages of being a franchisee, and the very first stage is a glee stage where everything is really good, but it goes downhill a little bit normally for most franchisees until they finally reach the ultimate stage of we. Did you ride the roller coaster, or have you ridden it yet of emotions as a franchisee? It sounds like this has been kind of a nice uphill ride for you.
Yeah, maybe I painted too rosy a picture. It did start off with a glee moment, and everything was wonderful and new and fresh, and everybody was very pleasant to meet and welcoming. So yeah, there was a honeymoon period. But then you get to a point where you really have to start working the clients and the situations and digging into the meat. I mean, unlike so many people who've gone into this particular franchise, I don't come from the industry. So it's not like I'm tapping into a 30-year career as an LPN or as an executive director of an assisted living property. I had a lot of learning to do, which is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want to fall back on maybe something I had done once before. I wanted to, do that uphill learning curve and challenge. So, I would say that I'm coming out of that initial dip and things are picking up and I'm getting quite busy and there's a lot of good things happening, but you kind of have to go through that. And I was mentally prepared for that. I went into this with no illusions. I knew that it wasn't going to be a light switch you just turn on and suddenly you're a fully functioning company. It was going to take time and you were going to have to do the legwork and put in the hours. And I don't mind doing that. Work doesn't scare me. As I said, I tried to take a break and I couldn't. So this is exactly what I wanted to do. And I love being absorbed all day long, all week long in this. It doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. It doesn't stop on Friday evening. This thing goes, because you're working with families, and a lot of times those families, they've got jobs too. So when they want to talk about mom or dad, or they want to go tour a property, oftentimes that falls on the off hours. More than happy to do it.
Nice. Well, I'm just glad to know you're not like the unicorn that had no learning phase.
No, it wasn't complete bliss. There were
So now and obviously we met from networking. What would you say did help with your, I guess, going through those phases, the learning phases? What would be the best advice to somebody getting into a franchise, even if it is the right fit, they work with a broker, they're in the right one, like you, they're going to have that learning. What is there any piece of advice you'd give?
I think you have to remember the business isn't going to come to you. You have to go out looking for it. You have to go hunting. You have to go meet people, get out of your comfort zone, go to places. I mean, I'm going to be a little funny here, but there's a truth to it. For many months there, I was truly the yes man. If somebody had an event and they said, you want to come? I was like, yes. It didn't matter where or when or what it was. It just was another opportunity to go meet more people, tell more people what I do. And yeah, there were times when it would have been much easier to say, yeah, I'm a staying tonight, or I don't feel like driving to that side of town. But you just do it, and you do it, and you stay out there. And it's been very rewarding. I've met so many great people in the last year. And this industry, maybe this isn't true of every industry, of course, but this industry is very kind. And the people who get into it are almost without exception here for the right reason. They really want to help people. So it's a great group of people to call my peer group. And that's made it very easy to absorb or to get really pulled into this situation. But yeah, to your question, I think one of the things you have to be prepared to is you have to go out and make it happen. It's not going to come to you just because suddenly you have a brand name.
Yeah, and speaking of just your brand and this particular franchise, tell us a little bit about what the franchise is all about. What exactly you do?
It's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Assisted Living Locators is about a 25-year-old company, 20-year-old company. Started in Phoenix, Arizona by an RN who was working at a hospital, and she started seeing more and more families being discharged and not sure where they were going to go next because they couldn't go home. Yeah, there's a lot of assisted living, memory care properties, independent living, but they didn't know which one to pick. And so she would help them pick the appropriate one for their situation. And she did this for a few years, turned it into a little company. And then after a few years, she started franchising it. And so since I think 2006, they've been franchising assisted living locators. I bought the franchise for the east side of Cleveland. And I was amazed when I got into it, just how many options are just on the east side of Cleveland alone. It is overwhelming, and Google's a great tool, but it doesn't tell you the whole story. There's so much more to know about these places. You need to know, how are they doing this year? Is the current staff as good as the staff that was there last year? So there's a lot of keeping your ear to the ground to understand which ones are doing a bang up job and which ones are on the mend, if you will. And so what I do, and this is what a senior placement agent does, you work with families to understand the situation of mom or dad or the uncle or whoever it is, getting a very good idea of what do they need. And then you work to get a little more information about where would they like to be, whether it's assisted living or memory care, and then what the budget is. And you take these parameters and I come back to the family with a very short list, maybe 2 or 3 options of potential properties that would make sense for their loved one. And then it's a very hands-on concierge type business. I will make appointments for the tours. I will go on the tours with the family. Oftentimes I'll even pick them up at home and drive them to the property because maybe they don't drive anymore. After they've seen the properties, if they make a decision and there's a placement, then I get paid by the property. So I'm always free to the family, which is one of the things I love about this business model. It's not like you have to make a decision. Are we going to use one of those agents or are we just going to go it alone? I'm free. Just use me. There's no obligation. And I think that's a great thing. And even though the properties do pay me, I think they come out ahead because they're getting a well-vetted client. They're not just getting a warm body from the street. It's someone who makes sense for their property. So it's probably going to be a good match and last for a long time. So to me, this is a win-win-win business model.
Super.
Yeah, it's really cool. I like it.
It is really cool. That's now how, I guess, what is the, how do you had mentioned if you had known of a service like yours when you were dealing with, how do you get your word out more? How do you let yourself be known more to families who don't know that this is a possibility?
Well, and I don't mean this to be a smart alecky, but it's going to sound like it. One thing I say a lot is everybody has relatives and nobody's getting younger. So it doesn't matter who I talk to. If they don't have someone in their immediate family that's getting close to that adult caregiver role or in need of some kind of senior living option, they probably have a neighbor, a coworker, a friend that might. And that's part of why I've done so much networking over the last year, is just to let people know that I exist, this company exists, and I'm here to help. So that's a big part of where referrals will come from, is just word of mouth. The other half is more industry based. You work with case managers, social workers, discharge planners at hospitals and rehab centers. And because they're working with people that are going to leave those properties, those facilities, and go somewhere, maybe not home, they oftentimes need help guiding the family to that next place. So I can take work off their plate and help them, help the family get to the next step easier than, the social worker might have just had a list of options to give them. I mean, those people are so swamped, they don't have time to do the digging that I do. So those are the two basic ways that people find out about me, is either through someone in the industry, like a case manager, or just through word of mouth because I've met so many people over the last year.
Yeah, one of when we were out just a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
on a mission in a different country, one of the ladies, we were doing a medical mission, and it was an elderly lady, and they were struggling with the intake nurse with what was wrong and what was going on. And one of the phrases she used was, and this was through translation, but it came out as loneliness is worse than sickness. And one of the things that I've heard you talk about is how important it is for the seniors to feel at home and to get a certain level of personalized care.
Yeah.
So what kind is it a matter of you just kind of vetting those places to make sure that they're getting somewhere that they don't have to have that feeling of being on their own and alone?
A great litmus test when I walk into a property is when you walk in, if you see residents out and about interacting, talking, maybe it's a little loud because they're having fun and laughing at TV or maybe playing a game, that tells you something about the community. If you walk in and it's as quiet as a library and nobody's smiling and nobody's saying hi, there's still people there, but maybe that's not a vibrant community. So a lot of what I do is, you visit frequently different properties and you kind of take a pulse of how are things going. And, if you talk to someone, maybe on an elevator or maybe you pass them, if they are smiling and they say hello right away, or, hey, how you doing today? You get the idea that they're a little energized. If you walk by people and they won't look you in the eye or they won't say anything, you can kind of infer that maybe something's not right here. And again, these places do go up and down. There's no good property and bad property. They're all in flux, right? It all depends on who's working there right now, who's on the management team. So a place that might have been struggling a year ago, check back in 6 months and maybe they've added or removed a few players and suddenly it's vibrant again. So a lot of what I do is just touring the properties on a regular basis, talking to people who go in there for other reasons. I work with a lot of in-home care companies, and even though they do go into people's homes, they also go into their assisted living apartments because that's their home as well. And if you talk with them and get their firsthand experience, you start to build this, 360-degree idea of what each property is and offers. And would I recommend this to a family member? I mean, that's kind of the defining line, right? If you can't put mom or dad, your own mom and dad there, why would I put yours?
And that's so valuable. It would be virtually impossible for a regular person to vet all the options that are out there.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you, one of the reasons I got into this, one of the many reasons I got into this, was when my kids entered high school. I learned about one of the companies that will help you get through the college application process easier than you might if you just go it alone. I didn't know they existed, but I learned about it, and I thought, look, I got 2 kids. I'm going to go through this twice. I haven't even thought about college applications for decades, and I'm glad I did. This wasn't a free service. I did have to pay for it. It wasn't very expensive, but I felt they did a lot to help me and the kids get through it. So it's the same thing. You can only learn so much about all the universities and colleges that are out there, how the application process works, which ones have funny requirements, which ones are pretty easy to navigate. And it's the same thing with senior living. It's too much for anybody to come up to speed quickly. I mean, you can do your homework and go around and visit a few places, but people have jobs, people have families. They can't give up everything to go do that. And that's where I can help, because that's what I do. I spend my days in and out of these places all the time.
What do you think one of the, I guess with the properties and really weighing them out, what do you think one of the biggest struggles are for most properties?
Right now, staffing. COVID did a real number on these places, and a lot of people, you were talking before, Stacey, about people leaving the IT industry. A lot of people got out of healthcare during COVID. It was overwhelming. They couldn't do it, and I completely understand that. But now that we're post-COVID, post-quarantine, those people didn't come back. And so it's hard for all of these properties to properly staff quality people so that the care, because really when everything else is said and done, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for someone to help take care of a loved one. Yeah. Yes, the atmosphere of a place, the amenities, the how gorgeous it is or how new it is. Yes, these are nice, but that's not really why you're going to move mom into an assisted living community. You're moving in there so she gets the care she needs. And really, that is a big struggle for a lot of places right now. They just can't find people to come work for them. And I'm not bashing my colleagues, but so many of them will go work somewhere, and then in a very short time, sometimes months, they'll move to another place. And so the people move around a lot, and that is a difficult thing to build continuity for the residents. You know, if they're constantly seeing new faces, it's hard to get that relationship going. So that's probably the number one problem right now, staffing.
That seems like a universal multi-industry problem.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not just healthcare.
No, well, it's good and great that you've grown and that you're happy with what you're doing, but what's next? Where do you go from here?
Great question.
You know, since the beginning of the year, I've been on this mission to get the message out because, you know, people in the industry know that there are people like me to help families. But most people, you know, if you go to sell your house, one of the first decisions you make is, well, which realtor are we going to use? Which, you know, real estate agent are we going to use? When people get thrust into that adult caregiver role, their first thought is not, well, which of those senior placement agents should we work with? They don't even know we're here. So I'm really on a mission to get the message out. So now that I've kind of built a foundation, I'm really trying to shout it from the mountaintops that we're here. Don't go this alone. You know, I have a colleague that has a phrase on their email footer that, you know, a decision this important deserves more than a Google search. And that's true. It's a very big life change, and it requires someone to kind of hold your hand through the journey. So I want people to know that we exist, and so more people use us and hopefully have a better experience of it. Because sometimes people will just drive around the corner and go, oh, look, there's one of those assisted living places right in town, and that's where they'll move mom or dad, not realizing that it's not a very good fit, and there was a better one just 5 miles in the other direction. Right? But if you don't know there's a guide to help you, you're just going to do the best you can. Because again, wonderful children trying to take care of their parents, but if they don't know there's a resource to help them, they're not going to use it.
Are you telling us that the person that pays the most to get their Google ad at the very top of the page is always the best?
There are a lot of things Google is fantastic at. It might be at least at the moment, something that it can be a nice starting point, but I don't think it tells you enough of the whole story.
Yeah, I agree.
Could not agree more.
Yeah, that statement. Hopefully Cast Magic picks that one up, because that was money. But it's so true. I mean, there are certain things that, like, yeah, Google search, a quick search, a few reviews are great for. And not to be funny again, but I mean, we have seen the movies like Happy Gilmore, the grandma in this place that's run by Ben Stiller. I'm sure there's places like that. I mean, come on, they have to exist. They don't. It's not somebody's own idea of it, because it's never happened. I mean, we know they exist. So, you know, to that point, they could be a place like that pays the right amount of money to be the top searched place. And you don't know, you're putting grandma or grandpa or mom and dad in that place. Do your research. There are certain things that, you know, having somebody like David, somebody like assisted living locators to do that. Yeah. I'm sure mom and dad will be very happy with you. So,
well, some of it is semantics too. You know, if I'm talking with someone and they use terms like old folks home or nursing home, or, you know, you can tell that they're not aware that there are different flavors of senior living, and assisted living in particular was a direct result of the nursing homes that were once upon a time pretty much your only option. And those do still exist, but they're much more institutional and medical. Assisted living is a lot more comfortable, and it was a direct reaction against that. It was, you know, you had an apartment with a door that locked so that people just couldn't come and go at all hours. They had activities. It wasn't sterile and white and chrome, you know, it had carpeting, it had wood. So they did a really big effort to differentiate themselves from the traditional hospital and nursing home. And to their credit, nursing homes pretty much have got the message, and they've also become more comfortable to visit. But yeah, it's one of those things that people don't realize there's various levels. And, a thing like independent living, as the name implies, it's a place you can go, get an apartment, your meals will be taken care of, laundry, housekeeping, but you're not going to get any real assistance with those activities of daily living. And I've had people go tour those looking for their mom or dad who might have severe dementia, and then they're upset because that property doesn't serve their needs. And you think, well, yeah, you shouldn't be looking in an independent living community when what you really need is a memory care property. So it's of course something that nobody would otherwise go digging into, right? It's like going out and reading the tax code just because it exists. You're not going to become a CPA just because you read some stuff. Here, you can read some articles on assisted living, but you're not going to be a pro, even if you know some of the concepts. There's just too many properties out there to sort through. It requires a full-time job.
So last week we talked insurance, and my experience in insurance is not a lot of people carry long-term care to help with this type of a thing. Do you run into, what are the financial implications that families could be thinking about? And do you have any assistance there? You said you look at their budget and try to work within that. But if they don't have some other thing like that long-term care to help, what can they do?
Well, long-term care insurance is one of those special things. If someone has it, immediately that puts them in a very small minority. If they bought it long enough ago that it's actually worth much, that's even better. Unfortunately, they've watered those policies down so much that if you bought one in the past 5-10 years, it's probably not going to do much for you, which is really sad. It's better than nothing, of course. But long-term care insurance is something people can use to offset the cost of assisted living. A lot of times people don't know just how much this is. If someone's a veteran, oftentimes veterans have no idea how many benefits are coming to them. Even if they didn't serve during wartime, there's still a lot of things that can be added to a person's resource pool, if you will, from the Veterans Association, just because they were a veteran. Everything from free medications to free medical equipment, assistance with food. There's a lot of things. And if you don't know what's out there, you don't know to go to ask. So, one of the questions I ask in that initial Q&A session is, are you a veteran? Or was your husband a veteran? Was a family member a veteran? Because they oftentimes haven't done any investigating, and they're missing out on options that will help that situation. There are some other ways you can find to offset the cost of assisted living, memory care. One option is the Medicaid waiver. If you just can't afford that so many thousands of dollars a month to live there, Medicaid waiver gives you an option. It's not great for everybody because it comes at a pretty steep price. You kind of have to give up everything to get there. There are some people that can help you get there and maybe not give up everything, but it's a tricky dance step to do that. There are ways to use the assets in your house to offset the cost. It's possible to sell off life insurance policies to reclaim value while you're still alive. So there are some things we can talk about, and everybody's situation is going to be a little different. One other thing that, the sticker shock sometimes goes away once people think about all the things they're currently paying for to stay at home, especially if they're bringing in skilled nursing or even just non-skilled in-home care. That adds up very quickly. So, by the time you do sort of a comparison of, should I stay at home with all these utility bills and landscaping and snow removal or whatever else, or go into assisted living where basically for one rent value, all of that's included. It's a education process we go through with just about every client.
I love that you say that it's an education. I mean, every guest that we've had on so far, that you can tell they clearly are nailing it when it comes to customer services. They're leading with educating their clients, education. right now is obviously, I think they're calling it, I've heard it on different programs, the silver avalanche, maybe the
Tsunami.
or tsunami. They're calling it different things because baby boomers are the largest group that is in that pool that might be looking or needing to start looking for services like this.
Yeah.
With that being said, there's obviously the big facilities, but then where I've heard that term is in the real estate world where there are people creating their own smaller facilities. Do you work with those on top of the bigger facilities?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have the large commercial properties, and they can have everywhere from 50 to 150 apartments. And there are also a whole variety of smaller residential assisted living properties. Sometimes they look just like a suburban house. You would drive by them and never know that there are 5 or 6 residents living there with 24/7 care. Others are maybe a little bit more of a specialty building where maybe they can have between 10 and 15 residents. The idea, though, is, and I don't mean to, everybody's got their own place, right? So some of those larger properties with 50 to 150 apartments, for some people, that feels like living in a hotel. And, when you stay in a hotel for a few days, that's fine. But if you had to live in a hotel for 2 weeks, you might go a little stir crazy and want to go home. And that's what those residential assisted living properties give you, is more of a sense of home. You're there with a small number, maybe 3 or 4 other people. Maybe there's one person who does all the cooking and you get to know that person really well. A higher level of care. It's cozier, right? I've had some clients move out of, and I don't mean any disrespect, but move out of one of those big box properties and downsize to a smaller residential place for that very fact. They wanted to feel part of a smaller family. But those are the two extremes. There are also a lot of innovative thinking going on in this industry, and there's some people trying to find ways to cut down the cost of assisted living by coming up with creative ways to provide an option. Not so much here in the Cleveland area, but I have a colleague out in the Arizona area who is involved in setting up an assisted living property made up of nothing but trailer park homes, just to keep down the overhead. You still provide service. It's still a place to live, but you don't have to have that large hotel-like building.
Yeah.
There was actually just one recently here in the Cleveland area that opened that repurposed an old motel. And they went into it with the intention of trying to offer lower cost assisted living. Because that is an underserviced market. If you've got a lot of assets, you have a lot of options. If you really don't, the Medicaid waiver is a great parachute. But if you're in that middle area where you just can't swing it, your options get pretty lean. And something I say a lot is whoever figures out how to create the Southwest Airlines of assisted living is going to be a very wealthy person. Because there's a lot of people in that silver tsunami that, despite everything I said about balancing out and compare and contrast, they still can't swing it, and the options just aren't there. So if someone could come up with an option, a very nice option, yeah, that person would be quite successful.
Well, if you're out there, come up with it.
Come up with those ideas.
Shoot the ideas in the chat. Let us know. Coach, so we are coming up at the last kind of quarter of this. Any final thoughts? Any final questions?
No, I think this has been so interesting. I'm one of those people that didn't know this type of service existed, and so I think this is quite fascinating that it exists. When I was going through my franchise search, I had home healthcare franchises show up, but this one didn't pop up. So this is I'm really glad you came on, and because I think this is an important story to tell.
And again, it's a free service to families out there. So again, this is what you're looking for, everybody, is assisted living locators. But it's a free service to the families. It truly is. I mean, you can see the passion David has for it. And that's, yeah, I'm glad you came on too, because it really is something that I don't think again, these are one of those things. I've sold it all. Everybody, I've shared this on the podcast many times. But and one of the things in my journey of selling things was cemetery plots and talking about death and the pre-needs or pre-planning. People don't really. It's something that nobody wants to talk about, but it's so crucial, and it comes at like the worst time of your life. That you don't want to just keep putting it off until, I mean, there's certainties we know, and death and taxes are those certainties. It's something that we should talk about more. We should share more, and we should really be sharing with people out there. It was one of those things that I had the joy. I'm sure the same joy you're talking about with this of doing that. That the cemetery was like. This is a hard time, and people are like, you're dealing with people like during death. Why isn't it like there's something wrong with you? Like no. Like it was kind of like nice to be there and be like the comfort in this like very hard time, but also seeing that it was something that was very hard for people to talk about because it's an inevitable thing. Like our parents are going to grow up, they're going to need something like this. Why do we wait until? Why aren't we talking about it now? So I'm glad that there is a service like they're out there for this. It is something that people need to talk about more. Sure, this shouldn't be as scary. You're gonna put me in this home like on Happy Gilmore. Like, no, we're gonna find somebody nice like David at Assisted Living Locators, and they're gonna find you an actual good place, and we're gonna give you a great tour. You're not gonna end up like the grandma on Happy Gilmore, I promise. But that's really where I think that what you're doing and what this franchise does, and again, just to back what Coach said. We need this shared more, and that's why I'm glad you were able to come out. Again, anybody who didn't know this is a service who has parents, grandparents in that age, like reach out. It's a free service. And how many locations do you guys have? If you could share, how do they reach out to you? What is the best way for them to find somebody in their area who does your service?
Yeah. To answer that, and then I want to circle back to something you touched on a moment ago. If you go to assistedlivinglocators.com, there's a analysis tool on it, and one of the things it will ask is your zip code. From there, it will get you in touch with the right person for your area. One thing I really like about this franchise and the fact that we are nationwide is families don't all live in the same place anymore, and they're spread out across the country. Because I have colleagues somewhere all over the country. If mom lives here in Cleveland, but the kids live in Denver, I can work with my colleague, and together we can both hold hands where it's needed. That's a nice service. That's a really nice thing, so that you're not just dealing with one person, but the brother and sister over in Utah feel neglected. Yeah. Something you said a moment ago when you were talking about the franchises for the in-home care. Although the name of the company is Assisted Living Locators, and assisted living is in the name of the company, that's only one of the many things I do. I will work with a family from the very beginning of the journey to maybe get them in touch with an in-home care company, because maybe that's all they need right now. They just need a few extra hours of help each week. It's going to change. The situation will unfortunately get worse. And at some point, the amount of hours that you're paying for that in-home care company outweighs the cost of assisted living. So it just makes more sense to move. But, along that journey, the family's going to need elder law attorneys to put those legal documents in place. And that's something people should do earlier than later. Yeah. Get them in place while everybody is still of sound mind, and make sure the whole family knows where to find them. I had a very unfortunate experience last fall where a woman said, yeah, we have a will, we have powers of attorney, and where are they? Oh, I don't know. My husband took care of all of that, and he passed away 2 years ago. So it was as if they didn't exist, because she genuinely did not know where they were. So we can help get people in touch with elder law attorneys. When the time comes for the move, I've got a lot of realtors that I can recommend, and downsizing companies, moving companies, estate sale companies. So really, I can be the quarterback for the entire senior living situation. And again, it's just to get you through it easier than going it alone.
Yeah, that's awesome. My dad used to facilitate estate planning, bringing in insurance and legal and the whole team to put together a plan like this. So I got a lot of respect for what you do, because it can literally save the legacy of a family that would really be at risk if none of that is thought through.
And just like everything else in life, getting ahead of it, planning ahead of time instead of being in that reactionary mode, that's fantastic. If you have the luxury of time and you can work out each of the items so that when something does happen, you have a plan and it's ready to execute, that's fantastic. So in addition to getting the word out that my company exists, I'm also trying to convince people to have those conversations earlier on with their family, get those documents in place and make sure people know where they are, just so that when things do turn south, because it usually happens quickly, you've got everything lined up and you have one less worry, because you already have a lot of worries in a time like that.
Yeah. Well, Coach, final thoughts. Then we'll let David, and we'll let you share how they can reach out to you and where to find you, and we will close this out.
Well, I'm not quite having the mobility issues yet, but my wife and I have already been talking. Our home, our bedrooms are all on the second floor. It's like, if we live here, we're going to have to add on to the bottom to have a master bedroom without these steps to go up. And so I don't know that it's ever too early to start thinking through these issues and planning. So I'm ready to, let's figure out how we can get up with David and learn more and help a lot of people out.
Yes.
And to that point, Stacey, there are companies out there that will help you senior fit or make the home ready for seniors, so that it's not just a handyman, it's not just a contractor. They specialize on getting a home safe for seniors. I have a few of those here in the Cleveland area, but I'm sure there are some where you're at.
Well, that's 2 or 3 things. I had no idea that I was just laying softballs here for you. This is good. You can do it all. This is really good.
well, we obviously are going to connect Coach to David and the show. And again, anybody reach out to David. David, where can they find you? You are on LinkedIn. He is pretty active out there, so he has done a great job. And again, like you said, guys, that's the difference of, you don't just, because you become part of a franchise or part of a bigger name, the way to get out there is you got to put the work in, and he's done a great job. The YouTube video you did recently was where we got a lot of and info from. So you've done a great job. Where can they find you?
I really think the easiest way to get a hold of me is go to assistedlivinglocators.com, put in your zip code, and if you put in something in the Cleveland area, that'll bring up me. But if you are somewhere else and you need help in your area, it'll bring up the right contact. If you want, my business number is 330-348-0957. I'd love to listen to you, talk to you, hear what's going on with your situation. But check the website, and that'll get you connected to me if we're the right people to work together. If you're in Minneapolis, you're going to get somebody else, and they're a fantastic person. They'll help you as well.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and the
thank you for having me.
Knowledge. Of course. No, we love just sharing opportunities that are different out there for folks to choose from. We really just want to be that help, again, like you are, for families finding somewhere for their parent or loved one. We really just want them to find their next calling. And again, there's so many franchises, so many different opportunities out there, so many different passions that you can have, that really just find what's unique to you, like David did. They was in IT. Now look at him. He's growing and going to be helping hundreds, if not thousands soon, families finding place for their loved ones to go, which is super important and super needed during this silver avalanche. So if you are looking for a franchise during this silver avalanche and you have a passion like David has, Assisted Living Locators, that's another franchise that was not known but now is out there and living and breathing on the Robinhood Capitalists YouTube channel. Again, like and subscribe if you did find anything on here beneficial. Thank you, seriously, David, for joining us. This was really beneficial. Hopefully there are some families that do just reach out from the show. If you do reach out, give us a shout out. Let David or somebody at Assisted Living Locators know you've heard about them or found out from their service from the Robinhood Capitalists. We'd like to just know that our message is sharing and helping share their message to get this out there. Again, free service to families. It is free.
Always free.
It's free to let them be their concierge and give you that white glove service that your loved ones deserve for that final place. So again, until next time, y'all, we are going to break this down. David, on Thursdays, me and Coach will dissect a little bit deeper after we sleep on it. I'm sure Coach is going to have a lot of great questions after this because it seemed like he might be reaching out to you for your services soon or somebody in his area. But
I've got a good whiteboard idea too. If we can make it work from summer camp here.
And if the whiteboard's working and we don't have issues, again, looks like he's got a whiteboard lesson to really break out on Thursday. So don't miss it. Thursdays 9 a.m. As always, we do break down the show with our guest and just the franchise, the opportunity. Sounds like it's a slam dunk for anybody looking in this industry. Assisted living locators. David's first year in, he said it's couldn't have gone any better scripted. So again, that's what you want. Working with who was the broker? Plug the broker you worked with, because again, good brokers. Who did you work with that nailed the three choices for you?
It was a gentleman named Les Simpson. His company was the Entrepreneur Source, and Les was fantastic, really good guy. And he had done something similar to what I had done. He had been in the publishing industry, and he got to a point where he thought, let's mix it up. And he ended up becoming a franchise broker. So I'm really glad I met him.
There we go. Thank you for plugging that. Les, good job. Clearly, you nailed one here. So again, everybody, if you're out there, if you're part of the corporate monster laying off constantly and you're not sure what to do, you got some money, you got the college degree, you don't want to work for somebody else, follow us, the Robinhood Capitalist. If we didn't have the franchise on, we'll try. We're trying to pair passions with purpose so that you can be one of the families who create your heaven on earth. Because in the end, that is our goal, to help 10,000 families create their heaven on earth. So be sure to check us out Thursday, 9 a.m., the Robinhood Capitalists. Until next time, Coach, have fun at camp. Tell everybody say hi. Maybe have some of them come on so they could have a memorable.
Yeah, maybe I'll invite someone. The bunk beds here might make me up that need for mobility help though. My timeline is changing based on the bunk beds.
I'll bet. Yeah, not very comfortable, is it, Coach? Well, until next time, y'all. Again, Robinhood Capitalists, feed the good wolf.
Thank you, DJ.
I'm always on the red eye. This time around, it's not even about getting paid. I'm just